Today we get to sit down with one of the most controversial figures in hip-hop, Adam22, a man who is one of the biggest hip-hop platforms in the world, and also a man that has been under a lot of public scrutiny as of late. We get to dive deep into his life, explore what it's like being him, Adam22. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Tommy G Show. We are here with Adam22. There's a lot of directions we could start, but first I want to talk. We just did a workout. Tell us about your fitness journey, man.
About 6 months ago, I went on a BMX trip to Brooklyn and rode bikes every day, like 8-10 hours a day. And I was about 35 pounds heavier than I am right now. And by the end of that trip, I was just like, yo, I can't do this anymore. And I just started eating real clean and working out way harder, and I've actually been averaging like way more weight loss than I thought I was going to be, because normally try to lose like a pound a week, and I've been like quite a bit out in front of that. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying it, loving the discipline, the self-control, and I'm trying to lose like another, I don't know, 10-15 pounds, trying to really get to like real deal shape with like abs. Shredded. And then I'm going to start trying to bulk and like really pack some muscle on. So I'm just, it's really giving me something to focus on, and I'm just really enjoying it. I've been working out my whole life, but I never really got super serious about it until this, I guess.
What kept you in your stage of not being in shape?
I feel like I've always gotten my motivation to work out from like hating myself or hating the way I look. You look in the mirror and you feel genuinely horrible about the way you look. You look like a
slug.
Yeah, and then it's really easy to go to the gym and eat clean when you hate the way you look. But my problem is always like, I get to a point where I don't hate the way I look anymore and I feel all right. And then it's like that stops me. So now I'm trying to like anticipate that and like expect to feel a lot less like, negativity towards how I look, but then still trying to find ways to stay focused,
Is that a lot about how you are driven, is running away from the negative side rather than just embracing because you could say, I feel better in the morning, my body's flowing, my mind is faster, focus on the positive things. Are you motivated by more of the...
See, when you say all that, I'm like, oh, I could have said that. That sounds a lot more positive, because all those things are definitely true too. Like the workout that we just did, I know that when I go into the office today and do 3 interviews, I'm going to feel infinitely better as a result. But somehow like my motivation, I think really comes more from like not wanting to hate the way I look more than like really wanting to feel good all day. Like that is awesome, but that's not going to be the thing that makes me not eat a burger tonight. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's rational. Sure.
So you are a man that you've had a lot of success on your journey. A lot of people could look at your life and say, man, this guy has won the jackpot. He's got, you're cruising in a few different directions. You have a lot of wonderful things happening, but I think people underestimate the other side of fame too, some of the downsides of it, because I don't think not being able to go to the grocery store is a cool thing. Like I think...
I can go to the grocery store.
Okay, so, yeah. But I think, but in general, like, I mean, you have to keep your address safe, right? Because, So what are the aspects of fame that maybe you didn't anticipate or are like, man, I wish I could just do this for a day?
Yeah, I feel like so many people want to be famous to whatever degree, but then once you actually get there, you finally get to realize like all these things that you have been taken advantage of or taken for granted your whole life. Like, I used to just go on long walks around like, the downtown LA area, like all these different parts of LA. I'll go on a 4-hour walk, 3-hour walk, whatever, just like listening to podcasts, just not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
And now it's like that just has kind of changed, like, or even I had to go to the mall to buy my girl like a present at one point. Like I was kind of last minute, it was like the day before her birthday and I forgot to buy something. So I go to the mall and I just, I had to take like 15 fucking photos, and in a bunch of the photos, I'm like holding the bag from the place where I just bought the present. And I'm like, if she sees this, she's going to know what she's getting, and she's going to know that I bought it the day before. So yeah, being able to be anonymous is fucking pretty sick. And that's one reason I really like to go travel and stuff, is because when you're in other countries, for the most part, nobody knows who the fuck you are. And it's just like it's a cool feeling. But at the same time, like, for me, I consider myself really lucky because I was just watching the Harry and Meghan Markle documentary on Netflix and seeing what they have to deal with in terms of like their, level of celebrity. I'm just like, oh my God, I have like less than 1% of that. And I'm so thankful. Like, I think people who spend their whole lives just chasing after being more and more famous are fucking deranged. Because once I got some of it, I was like, this is cool and I'll accept it and all the good shit that comes with it, but I'm not trying to be Tom Hanks, because that is not something I think I would really enjoy.
Well, it's also a really ridiculous metric to chase after, because I think if you want to be, hey, I'm the best guitar player in the world and people know me, I think you want to be known for a craft. But just known to be known is not really a cool thing. And I think also privacy is a luxury. And so as I was doing some research on what you've been up to lately, I noticed that some of the things that have been happening on your channel, there's some drama going on. How do you walk the line between having stuff that people want to see, but also maintaining good relationships, also having certain aspects of your life private? Like, what have you learned navigating the content world? Because it's kind of a tightrope sometimes, right?
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing with No Jumper recently is that it hasn't been like, you know, a lot of times we'll have like a guest come in and there'll be some drama related to that. And that's one thing. Like the other day, Blueface came in with his girlfriend, Krishan Rock, and she ended up getting carried out by security. And that was like whatever, because she's not part of our team. You know, we're all friends with Blueface, but you know, that didn't really matter. Like the things that have sucked lately has been like the drama between the hosts and like different like weird stuff popping off between like people that are actually part of the crew. So that's something that I'm like super motivated to try to figure out, like, okay, well, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? Because it doesn't really help the channel that much. You know, these are like weird insular conversations. It's not like it's like the channel is skyrocketing, whereas like that Blueface thing, the channel skyrocketed off that, right? So I mean, yeah, I'm trying to get like the team a little bit more under control, but then at the same time, it's kind of like if you have like 3 people on camera, you're probably going to be able to like not get into any significant amount of drama. But as soon as you get like 10, 15, I mean, shit just starts happening. Like there's just personalities that just don't work together and these little disrespects that happen. And it's kind of like fascinating for the audience, but then it's also exhausting for us and feels like in some way it kind of like stops us from maybe making content that would be like a better use of the platform at times, you know?
So let's go all the way back to when Adam 22 was a child, a kid. Were you always a dreamer? What were you up to? What was your childhood like? And what did you see your trajectory when you were a kid?
I was unbelievably obsessed with media, I think, from a pretty young age. Like I was just so into, you know, video game magazines, wrestling magazines, comic book guides, video game guides. Like that was my thing. And then as soon as I found out about the internet and I realized that I could read other people's thoughts on the internet, I was just all in. I was on message boards, you know, running blogs and stuff ever since I was like 15. I just always kind of had something to say and I wanted to talk about shit and I wanted to hear other people's thoughts. So now when I look at what I'm doing with my life, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like that, like if you had known back then that you were going to end up in this position, you probably could have invented podcasts in the early 90s, which is like kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, I was just always that person. I remember like reading Time magazine cover to cover when I was in like, you know, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and like and asking my parents like all these questions, like what is a Republican? Explain this to me. Like I don't understand, you know, like I've always had that like fierce desire to just take in information. And even like just now when I was eating breakfast in a hurry so that I could come over and do this, I only got to look at Twitter for like 20 minutes. Whereas like on a normal breakfast, maybe I would like take my time and look at it for 40 minutes. So my brain is kind of like, oh, there's probably a lot of shit going on that you missed this morning. But, you know, as I get older, I try to like control it more because I do feel like it's kind of unhealthy for me to be doing like a deep Twitter dive, like, you know, 10 times a day when I try to like, you know, maybe look at it during breakfast, maybe look at it a little bit during lunchtime and try to like not make this a constant presence in my mind.
Have you always carved your own path or were you ever part of the standard world? Like, did you ever have a job, a 9-to-5 job, a W-2 job?
So all through high school, I had crappy jobs. I was a paper boy when I was 12, delivering papers at 4 in the morning.
You'd be a good paper boy. I can see you got a good sling to you.
But you don't even get to throw it. You got to put them in bags, and because it's on the East Coast where there's a lot of, you know, precipitation and everything. You got to put the newspaper in a bag, and then you got to go hang it on the doorknob. So that whole fantasy of just throwing it, nah, dude, I never really got to live that. I would throw it, and then I would get a complaint the next day because it wasn't hung on their door. But, yeah, I had all kinds of jobs. I worked at the grocery store. I worked at Sears selling shoes at one point. And then, but
were you good at that?
I don't know if I would say I was good, but at a certain point when I realized like, oh, if I work harder, I can make more money, I got pretty fucking motivated. Unfortunately, I was also stealing money out of the cash register, so I got fired. But then as I got a little bit older, I started to get way more into crime. I was doing like credit card fraud and
really,
yeah, like I got into that really young.
Did you ever get caught?
No, but I had a lot of people close to me get caught. And as a result of seeing everything that they were dealing with, that really like when I was 22 was pretty much like the end of me fucking with the credit card fraud stuff. And I was playing online poker for a few years and making a living doing that in the early days of online poker. And then while I was doing that, I started this BMX blog as a joke. And pretty quickly it just started to blow up from just me talking about bike riding. And then that kind of became my life for like 10 years. And then at some point that sort of pivoted into No Jumper with me doing like a much wider variety of content.
I want to hear more about credit card fraud. How do you go in that day and age? How did you go about committing the fraud? What would you do?
Well, I was doing a lot of shoplifting at the time, and somehow a friend of a friend heard about it, and they were like, "Yo, like I can help you make a lot more money if you just come meet with me and we'll do this credit card shit." So I go meet up with this kid from the Czech Republic, and I drive like a half hour to go see him. Pull up to his crib, and he just takes me out to lunch, and I see that he's like paying for it with this credit card that's clearly not under his name. And then he showed me, like took me to some stores, and he showed me how you take these credit cards and you just go purchase stuff. At the time we were buying gift cards and like laptops and video game systems, and then I would in a day go out with this dude and do maybe like $10,000 worth of purchases. And then
how would you get the credit cards?
Well, so you at the time there were these things called Simon gift cards that are basically like Simon is like a big mall chain, or was at the time at least. And so they're kind of like generic looking credit cards that like it says like Simon gift card on it. It doesn't say like a real name, so you didn't have to worry about having like a fake ID and stuff, which we eventually got to that level where you'd have to have a fake ID that matched the name on your credit card. But yeah, I'm gonna be real, I got pretty good at it in terms of like, it's just a lot of interpersonal communication stuff, or at least it was at that time, where if the girl at the store realizes that there's something sketchy going on, if you could just pull the situation back by talking and like convincing her that you're normal, like that's a big part of the challenge. And my homie who got caught, it was all because he wasn't really like paying enough attention, and he didn't realize that the chick was calling the cops on him, So like if he had realized 10 minutes earlier, he probably wouldn't have got caught because he would have been able to get out there. But over time doing this, I just started to build up like more and more anxiety, and I was just filled with this sense of dread.
Were you nervous when you would go do this?
Yeah, like a lot at first, and then I got into the groove of it where I didn't give a fuck. And then when I started to see all my friends dealing with like, or not all, but like some of my friends dealing with consequences of it, it started to just really not sit right with me. But at that time though, the laws were like infinitely less strict, because we're talking about the early 2000s, so it was so much easier to get away with it, or if you got caught you weren't going to do prison time. And now I hear about people getting serious prison time for credit card fraud. So
how did anxiety manifest in your body? What were the symptoms that you would feel in your body?
Diarrhea, number one. When you have that real deal nervousness, I would go to the bathroom and have to piss and shit and just like get everything out of my body. That's that like fight or flight thing. Yeah. So, and then, you got the clammy palms and stuff like that. But yeah.
Is there anything that you do currently that you get nervous for? Or would you say like even just a slight amount, or?
Certain interviews, like either interviews with like really high profile people where I feel a little bit nervous, like I want to do a good job, or sometimes when I'm going into like a more of like a debate or like panel style environment. Contentious. Yeah, where I don't really know exactly where it's going to go. Or sometimes I'll feel that when I'm interviewing somebody really smart, because I'm just kind of like, oh, fuck, like I want to make sure that I like put my best foot forward, and I want to be well researched, and I don't want to ask any questions that are going to make them feel like I'm a dumbass. So stuff like that I'll get like, but I used to get that feeling from like every interview. And then over time, that's kind of like gone away for probably 95% of the interviews.
It seems like almost, well, I guess you can do this in a bad way too, but a lot of the good things you can chase after life are going to make you nervous, but as long as you conquer that fear, behind that door are some of the coolest things you could ever possibly explore. Tell me about a time maybe that you were really nervous and things went well, and you're like, this was maybe a pivotal moment in your life, or just one that you're really proud of or happy about.
Oh man, there's been I remember even just interviewing Joe Budden. Like Joe Budden is just like, for me as a hip hop fan, he's just larger than life to me. And so like having him on my podcast was like, I was very nervous like going into that. And I was kind of lying to myself about it. Like I wasn't consciously thinking I am nervous, but then as it got closer and closer to the interview and I noticed myself fidgeting and I noticed myself wanting to snack and I noticed myself just like doing like weird little behaviors with my hands and stuff. And I was just like, oh, you're nervous. You're nervous. That's what's going on here. And then even like, but then fast forward to like maybe like a year and a half later, I went on his podcast and he really tried to like pin me like to some stuff. Like he was really trying to call me out for like, you know, interviewing too many gang members or whatever. And it was like a 3-hour argument. And I can honestly say I felt zero anxiety during that. Like in that environment, I felt fucking great. I felt very at home. But somehow like, even just a year and a half before that, I was pretty nervous to even just have a one-on-one with this dude. So that to me says a lot about sort of beating that anxiety out of your body by repetition. Like I always think
it's just like exercising, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, if you're a boxer, your first time going into the ring to do a boxing match, you're gonna be nervous as fuck.
Yeah.
But by the time you get to like fight 50, you probably don't give a shit, right? Like
I don't know. I feel like even the best in the world are terrified, but I think you can control it. Like I remember when I was a kid, I started wrestling when I was 10 years old, and every single match I'd be running back and forth to the bathroom, pooping, pissing, just it was terrible.
it's
I
crazy
hated
how consistent that is, right?
Like wanting to throw up. It took me until I was probably freshman of college to be like, if I lose, like I'm the only guy that's gonna remember. There's 400 people in the audience. No one really gives a shit.
Yeah.
Just go out there, have fun, be a gunslinger, and let it go. But it is interesting how your body sabotages yourself on an important task.
But it's useful because if you were going into war, you know, like a wrestling match or whatever, it's really like the fact that you get to have like a fake fight with somebody as part of your life is really kind of like a luxury, because picture going into war as a grown adult. Like if you're a soldier, think about how you're going to feel. And you might be going out into that battlefield for many days, barely having water or food, like getting all the shit and piss out of your body early on when you might have to like go shoot somebody is probably very useful. So it's kind of cool that your body does that for you in a way.
So if you had to go back in time and go to battle, is there a time period? Like, I don't know if it's the Spartans, the Greeks, maybe some Apache Indians. Like, what's a group that you're like, if you had to go to battle, like, I want these guys with me?
I think I'm probably going to click up with the Americans and the British and all of them and go kill some Germans, right? Like the Nazi era. Like if I could have, I feel like, you know, we kind of use Hitler and the Nazis as like our definition of evil. So, you know, that would have to feel pretty good to be like, yeah, I took out the most evil dude.
I just can't imagine for so much of history. Like imagine being in a medieval war where you are charging across the battlefield. Oh yeah, Adam, you're in the front lines today. If you could just march up front, please. And then when we say charge, you have to charge for like 200 yards. You're already dog tired by the time you have to start battling.
And you know what you should look into is like a lot of those people like in the Civil War and shit, when they were still just like running at each other and just shooting each other with guns, a lot of them would be shooting in the air, and like a huge percentage of the bullets didn't actually hit, because these are just regular fucking people that don't necessarily want to murder these dudes standing right in front of them.
Is that from a book called On Killing by Rex Grossman?
I think that it might be.
Yeah, he makes a theory that on a lot of warfare that people purposely miss.
Yeah.
You wonder about that.
Because if a motherfucker's shooting a gun at me, I feel like I would have no qualms about shooting back at him.
Well, it's like, sorry, buddy, like you're shooting at me, I'm shooting at you, and I just want to go home.
Right.
Like, I don't actually have anything personally against you. Our kings are beefing. I don't really care.
But you're shooting at me. Like me shooting you is the best bet I have of not getting shot at by you. But like imagine if you're at war and your fucking general or your leader tells you to go shoot a bunch of innocent people. You know, families and shit, because I'm sure that happens in war, or like has happened plenty of times throughout history. You probably would shoot in the air if you could and try to act like you were doing it without doing it. I don't know. Like that kind of makes sense to me, I guess. But yeah, we're getting deep.
Are you optimistic about the future? If you turn on the news, the TV, we're always marching towards the brink of destruction. You know, it's going to be a tough world, I think, to raise a kid, which you have, and I'm working on. I got my honeymoon in a week, and we'll see if
In a
Daddy
week?
can get cracking on that.
Hell yeah, that's amazing,
You
bro.
know?
Congrats.
Well, thank you, brother.
I just started rocking the engagement ring because I'm getting married in a couple months.
Ladies, he's taking. Get out of his DMs. Cut it out.
Actually, they can DM me.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that
if they
too.
do porn, yeah.
But what do you think, encountering this world, raising a young child? Are you optimistic? This is a great time to be alive, or you're like, man, there's a lot of stuff that I'm gonna have to watch out and protect my kid from?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an extent to which the thing that has made me well known and the thing that has made me be able to live in a nice house when it's not being destroyed by water and carpenters is social media. And that's also like the thing that terrifies me about my kids' life. I was just seeing that they're really recommending that kids not have social media until they're like 16 now, which even that might be, I feel like 16 is when like all your peers are going to have it. So you're going to feel like you have to, but yeah, I feel like social media has divided us so much and made the world so polar, and like the right hates the left and vice versa, and just everybody's at war all the time. And that kind of scares me. And there's an extent to which, like, you know, making content online and making a living off of it seemed like the coolest thing in the world to me. But I can't get it out of my head that at the end of the day, I'm essentially like creating content for free for like the Chinese fucking government on TikTok, or like all these giant like faceless global corporations. And like, I'm supposed to be excited that our shorts are monetized now so we can make like an extra $400 a month. I don't know. Like sometimes I do think like, where do we go from here? Like maybe there's something better than this, or maybe we're going to be stuck in this social media loop for the next, 30 years.
Do you think there's going to be a battle towards a more rugged, simple, minimalist life, that people are going to say, we've had enough of this society, we're going to go back to small communities? There's 14 huts in the village, we're going to have a community? Because it just seems like it's harder and harder to feel that belonging in tribe now.
I definitely think that return to primalcy is in the zeitgeist, and it's floating around, and there's people who want to seize onto this. Like a huge percentage of popular influencers and stuff have some sort of like stay off the internet message to go. Like Liver King was this like huge phenomenon, and a big part of what he's saying is like, sit around and play board games with your family at night. Don't be on your phone or watching Netflix or whatever. Obviously, Liver King is his own special case, but I don't know. It's like I definitely feel like there's a lot of that going on. Like Sam Harris is one of my favorite podcasters, and he's been talking about how he quit Twitter and how it's made his life so much better. And it hasn't made me want to quit Twitter, but has definitely made me like really keep consistently thinking about what this is doing to my brain, and maybe I'll be happier if I just don't look at Twitter for the whole day and stuff like that. So I definitely think there's something, and that might be the next great cultural revolution, is people who really are willing to say, I'm going to interact with social media in a very limited way. Yeah. But I think a lot of people will still be on it, though, because it's just too useful to not be on it, like for the average person. I don't know.
What are the simple joys you have in life?
I mean, my kid brings me a level of simple joy that I didn't know existed, where I can really get lost for 2-3 hours just sitting there playing Legos with her and, playing music on the TV and just having a good time with her. So for sure, that is like the simplest, most enjoyable pleasure that I get. I guess even like when I do get to spend time with just me and my girl, which you really stop taking that for granted once you have a kid. Because, like, even just me and her making time to watch this Harry and Meghan show on Netflix over the past week and stuff, or like, I don't know, that stuff really stands out to you. Like when you don't have a kid, you just get to spend as much time around each other as you want. And then when you have a kid, you're still spending a ton of time around each other, but you basically are really within very strict confines of what you can do. So then there's that. And then there's also just bike riding, which I don't get to do enough, but like that week that I spent in Brooklyn that I was talking about, where I was just riding BMX bikes all the time, was like, I might have felt more free and pure in that week than I feel throughout my normal life. And that's something I'm like really aware of, and I'm trying to kind of figure out how I can have more experiences where I just sort of have this like raw being outside type feeling from my youth,
So do you think that's just going to come from, like, maybe you have a quarterly retreat where you get a little Airbnb out in the middle of nowhere, maybe you invite some pals, maybe it's just you and the family, and you just make that time? Or how do you go about doing that?
It's tricky because it's like, on one hand, if I want to make as much money as possible, then it makes sense for me to really just be doing like YouTube content and social media shit every day. And as soon as my kid came around, I had a realization very quickly. Is like, oh, Saturday and Sunday are off limits now. Like Saturday and Sunday, I'm just going to clear that out and not be productive on those days. And it was a little tough at first, but like I'm really thankful I've done that. But yeah, when I look at my life now, it is kind of weird because it's like clearly the best thing I could be doing with my time on any given day is creating content. But I also just feel like I have to force balance upon myself because, you know, for all those years when I had the store on Melrose, I would be doing, you know, 4 interviews in a day and then go to the studio with a rapper at 10 p.m. and be in the studio getting loaded until 3 in the morning and then wake up after 5 hours sleep and go back to the store and keep doing the same thing. And like, now that I have a family and a kid, it's like giving me this balance where I'm like, oh, all right, I need to be very, very diligent and conscious of what's making me happy and what I want my life to turn into, because I don't want my whole life to be dictated by what's going to make me the most money, you know?
So then 2 things to think about here would be, one is, do you have a number in mind or a lifestyle in mind where this is enough? I no longer have to think about wealth creation, because it's funny, like you can go from like when you have all these big dreams and all of a sudden you're making more money than you ever thought you ever would in your life, but then it's like, okay, I got to keep my foot on the gas. I got to keep my foot on the gas. Do you have a number that's like, okay, I'm set? And then also, do you ever see a period of your life where you're going to go radio silent and you're going to have a spot in the woods where you're just reading books and doing Kadama and being more quiet?
Oh, like that sounds sick, but then at the same time, if I was away from everyone for like a week, I know myself and I know that I would start like writing a book, or I would start, I'm going to make this new YouTube series where I'm going to make videos about this, this, and this. Like, that's just where my mind is at. And like, it's kind of hard for me to imagine not having my mind at least somewhat wired in that way. Like, as soon as COVID hit and I couldn't do interviews, I started doing these long form, like, you know, documentary type videos, like talking about different things I was interested in and stuff. Like, I just have an energy inside of me that I know I have to be putting out to a certain extent. So I don't know, like being completely away from everything, it sounds kind of tempting, but I don't think it's for me.
So clearly creation is important to you, and clearly staying busy and engaged with your mind is important to you. You've done a lot of things in your career. What do you have on the horizon that you're like, I'm waking up and I'm excited about this?
See, that's the interesting thing, is because at a certain point with No Jumper, I just kind of got into this groove where I'm making content. And, you know, in a lot of ways, my goal is to make a fuckload of content. Like, I feel like I do more interviews than nearly everyone else in the game.
You're very prolific.
Yeah, like there's a lot of weeks where I'll do 10 interviews. Like this week, I think I'm doing 8 interviews, and that just doesn't even really feel like that big a deal to me. So then, like, you know, and that's probably like the best use of my time on any given day. But then I do start to think like, okay, what's the big picture thing? Like, what is, like, should I make a documentary about something that I feel very strongly about? Should I write a book? Realistically, if I write a book, are like, you know, 3% as many people going to see it as if I just made a YouTube video, you know? Like a lot of people like Sam Harris, who I just mentioned, I got into him from reading his books. And then at a certain point, it just became so much more efficient for him to just do podcasts. And so I don't know, like in terms of having like a big pie in the sky ass idea, I'm not 100% sure about that at this time. And I sometimes feel like I need to create more space in my life. That's why I'm glad in a few months I'm going to my honeymoon with my girl for like a month. So hopefully I can create more space to just sort of think about like what exactly I want to be doing with my time. But
how long have you been together?
6 years.
And what made you say, now I'm getting married after 6 years?
Well, I always said that I didn't want to get married, or at least I didn't care about getting married. And then we had a baby. And then immediately it just became so clear in my head, like, you need to get married. Like, you clearly are planning on, you know, I already planned on being with her long term when we had a baby, but I don't know, the wedding and the marriage thing just it just seemed so much more important. Like, all of a sudden, once I had the kid, I just like realized the importance of the institution of marriage so much more. And it just felt like it was the right thing to do. I don't know.
So if I understand Plug Talk correctly, you have a unicorn situation in which you and your girlfriend, soon to be wife, get to fuck other women and enjoy it together. Is that right? Kind of the layout of the show?
We interview them and then we have sex with them.
Now, to some people, that's like, oh my gosh, you've cracked the code. You've taken the red pill. Oh my gosh, the numbers are flying across the screen. Life is unlocked. But I think with everything, there's a yin and yang to that. So like, did you have to structure clear boundaries or rules, or how do you manage? What are the downsides of the open relationship, and explore that?
So we don't have like a traditional open relationship because we don't sleep with anybody else off camera. You know, we're open to the idea of sleeping with other girls off camera, but realistically it hasn't really happened in like the last.
It's more so strictly business.
Yeah, for the most part. Like, but we got, like, when we first started hooking up, that was something we were doing pretty consistently, was like meeting girls and hooking up with them, you know? And then over time, it just came more and more like, so why are we doing this? Like, why would we go out of our way to just hook up with this girl and have fun when we could do it on camera and make serious money off of it? So that's really how we kind of got led in the direction of doing adult content together. And I mean, crack the code. Like, I mean, I feel like if anything, fucking so many girls on camera has really kind of gotten rid of that. You know, when you're young and it just seems like the coolest thing in the world to get some pussy. And now I'm just so used to the idea of it that it's not alluring to me in the same way. Like, I feel like I could go to a nightclub and run into the fucking hottest supermodel in the world and she could be trying to fuck me and it wouldn't really, you know, like, I feel like I just have like a way different perspective on women and sex as a result of having slept with so many in like a business setting. And so when I see dudes who are like in their 40s and 50s and they're basically like tanking their fucking life because of their desire to have sex with new women, I'm just like, wow, like, I feel like the porn thing has kind of like allowed me to transcend that, which is, I think, kind of valuable, because some of the most successful men in the world cause themselves the biggest, you know, chaos in their lives from just sleeping around or not being able to be faithful or whatever.
Have there been any bumps in the road of that journey?
Like, early on, we would be getting drunk and sometimes doing nose drugs while we were hooking up with random girls. And I remember like one or two scenarios where, you know, like, my girl would be like a little too drunk. This is like 6 years ago. We haven't done drugs in like 4 years, but she would get kind of like, you know, irrationally like angry at me or the girl or whatever. And like, now that we're doing it in like a business setting and we're sober and everything's on the up and up, it's like, I do have to keep in mind that I want her to feel like I'm showing, you know, an appropriate amount of attention to her in comparison to the other girl. But there also is the dynamic of like, you know, my girl's in every episode, so we kind of do want to highlight the other girl and show more of her to whatever extent. But yeah, my girl's like kind of called me out a few times. She's like, oh, so you came kind of fast with that girl today, huh?
Don't you think it's just down to novelty, though?
Yeah, that's what I'd be saying. But I really think there's a thing with vaginas. I think vaginas are like cookies or like cupcakes. Like, when it's made with love, it's just better. It just hits different.
You can tell when someone's really into you and loves you versus they're just doing it to...
I mean, it's two scenarios. Either my girl has like the tightest vagina in the entire world, or it was made with love. And that's part of what makes me so endeared to it. I feel like I can feel the love when I'm fucking her.
That's a beautiful thing. So I think one thing that we can dive into here as well is you are a true YouTube and online entrepreneur. And so a lot of kids, that's the number one profession. They want to be a YouTuber. They want to escape the standard life. They don't want to be in a cubicle. They want to do things but march to the beat of their own drum. What are the different streams you've created for yourself, and just to maybe open people's minds of like what is possible of, you know, what can flow towards you in this world?
Different revenue streams? Okay, so, I mean, we have, you know, people who just sort of pay us on a consistent basis, whether it's on Plug Talk or No Jumper, that we have a Patreon and an OnlyFans for No Jumper as well, where there's some, like, behind-the-scenes content and stuff. So, you know, you got to think about that, is that, like, that's really, for a lot of people, going to be the core of your revenue if you're, like, a smaller content creator, is, like, trying to get people to give you money on a consistent basis, but then also knowing that nobody's going to even know who the fuck you are to start giving you money consistently if you don't really blast yourself out there on all the other social media platforms. You know, and YouTube's cool because you can make some money on YouTube. Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and stuff are like less cool because it's a lot harder to monetize.
It's just driving traffic to YouTube.
Because you just have to do it. You have to like be willing to chop up your like, especially when you're early in your career. Like, now in my career, I can afford to be a little bit more trying to profit maximize, but when you're really just getting in the game, you just try to do anything possible to just get as much attention on you. Like a good metaphor I heard for it is like you have a trampoline in your backyard and you're jumping on it. And every time you jump up in the air, a few people might see you. But, you know, then you go back down onto the trampoline and nobody sees you again. So you got to just keep jumping. And every time you jump, somebody else in the neighborhood is going to see you. And if you really are killing it, if you really be jumping your ass off, then you might have, you know, hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people paying attention to you over time. So it's just a game of exposure. But I will say, too, that, like, this is my biggest piece of advice for young content creators. I see a lot of young content creators who start to get a little bit of a fan base and they go full profit maximizing. Like they're streaming all the time. They're trying to get donations. They're trying to, like, you know, and that shit to me is like, if you're small, you should be trying to work on how you can make short form content of yourself that will do well. Or like even with your stuff, you make these great YouTube videos and you could easily chop that shit into TikToks and everything. But I mean, getting exposure when you are small is like by far the most important thing. And I know it's like tempting when somebody's like, oh, well, if I stream 30 hours this week, then I might be able to pay my rent. It's like, you gotta like avoid that temptation. Like this is about growing and becoming the best content creator you can. And you have to like fight against some of that urge to just profit maximize at every turn.
So one thing that I was curious about with the streams, because I would imagine a lot of the stuff you put on YouTube is demonetized, or, well, especially, I mean, Plug Talk's not even, is that OnlyFans that you post that on?
Well, the sex part is on OnlyFans, but then like we put clips of everything else on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and all that.
So I recently got a strike from YouTube, and it was a very frightening experience. It was from an unlisted video that, it was the craziest moments of 2022. So it was like an hour-long video. So I'd upload it, see what their feedback was, delete it, upload it again. And so I had maybe 6 or 7 versions of it that I kept uploading it. And version number 4 that I had no intention of ever posting got striked for a clip that was part of a monetized video before.
Oh my God.
And so, and it was really, because that is, I have a few different streams. I'm doing real estate. I have a little bit of a Patreon. I got YouTube and then the merch and the sponsorship. So I have my different streams, but really if you shut off my YouTube, the majority of my income is getting shut out. And so like, this is what I do full time, and then my wife is going to retire and join me full time, and we got teammates here that we're trying to support. So the fact that you're kind of against this machine here, like when I talked to my contact at YouTube, it was like, well, this is policy. There's nothing we can do, and I'm like, I know if I disappear from the platform, it's not going to make a dent. I mean, they're not going to feel it, and they're not going to notice it. And there's 100 other people that are going to be making content and take my place, and I get it. But how do you feel about censorship? How do you feel about, I guess, making sure that you're secure so that if one stream goes down, that you're still okay?
Yeah, I mean, like I tell my team that, like, when it comes to how we're managing our business or how we're hiring people, like we need to be able to take a 30% hit to our revenue at any given time and not, you know, crumble as a result. Like we have to be able to like continue to, like, we shouldn't be hiring an employee unless we can afford to take a 30% hit in our revenue, because it happens sometimes. Like Facebook is one of our best revenue sources and we haven't made any money off there for the past couple months just because of some random post, like a story that damn near might as well be the same exact story you just told me about uploading something and it just randomly gets taken down. And for us, that equals like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of revenue. And, you know, that sucks for me, but it also sucks for the fact that I have all these employees I got to pay and shit. And I would hate to get to the point where, and it could happen, where if Facebook and YouTube both said like, hey, we're not fucking with you at the same time, then I might have to fire 10 people at once. And like, that's terrifying. But also, I mean, you just kind of got to play the game, try to keep you have to be diverse, you know, because I would hope that if our whole YouTube channel got shut down, that I would be able to like figure out something to do where maybe we just do like a merch thing that, you know, maybe the audience would take some sympathy on us and the fact that, you know, that our business was kind of fucked up. But I think just diversifying is the biggest thing, because I started to feel a lot more comfort and happiness, honestly, with the Plug Talk thing, because that was kind of like, oh, now if No Jumper just explodes, I got this and I'll be all right. And that, like, the more security you get from just diversifying your revenue streams, I think is like a very, very underrated thing for how much happier that can make you, to just know that worst case scenario, I'm still going to be all right.
So let me think here for a second. Streams. I had a perfect one lined up, and then I listened to the...
I know that feeling.
Okay. Oh, yeah, this is it. So, are you a guy that was a natural boss? Because you seem like you're kind of I don't know if you would consider yourself a black sheep in some senses, and that you felt like maybe not isolated in life, but you were marching the beat of your own drum, and just naturally that's going to be a lonelier path than if you're... So what have you learned becoming a boss? And was that a natural transition for you? Or was that shoes you really had to grow into?
I don't think I am necessarily a natural boss in a sense. I kind of feel like my personality is a little bit too temperamental and like black sheepish, like you're saying and stuff, where, you know, I don't want to be the one who has to put out every fire business-wise. And also I have, realistically in my adult life, I've never had a normal job. Like my last job was when I was like 18 or some shit. And so
doing credit card fraud.
Well, before that, yeah, my last legit job was when I was still basically in high school. So for me to like, you know, I don't know what it's like to be a person who wakes up every day and goes to a job. So I don't necessarily think I understand the predicament that a lot of the people who work for me are in. But that's why it's important. Like I have this dude, Josh, who's my brother-in-law that I hired to help run No Jumper. And he's had a bunch of shitty jobs. Like, you know, he was in the workforce for like damn near 10 years or whatever before he came to No Jumper. So I think a lot of times when I see the way that he's dealing with situations with the employees and stuff, I'm like, this is important. He's playing a very important role here because I don't have the bandwidth when it comes to like doing all these interviews and stuff. It's very hard for me to stay tapped in on like how all the employers are feeling. So that's just like, and I think hiring is the most important thing, because if you can hire a great team that compensates for the things that are, you know, not the best about your own personality, like just being able to identify your own weaknesses and know who you have to hire is huge. Like I know that I'm never going to be able to do my own taxes. I'm never going to be able to do my own accounting. Me paying my business manager to keep track of my finances is the best fucking money that I spend every month, because
you never have a headache.
I would probably be in prison if it wasn't for him, because I'm not going to be able to keep track of this shit. I can't do math. I can't, you know, it would be hard. Yeah.
So one thing I'm curious about is you've been in some, let's just say, adrenaline inducing events. We were in Mexico a couple months ago, interviewing a guy that had maybe done some drug dealing. His name was Hostage. He was a friendly man, but his name was Hostage. And bam, door kicked in, 3 Mexican police, face covered, hands on your head, down on the ground.
I missed this one. Whoa.
So scary. Definitely the scariest moment of our life. And we were so helpless. Like you think, like when you're a guy, like, oh, if I'm in a classroom where a school shooter comes in, I'll just do this, I'll do that. There was nothing. Like if this guy wanted to stick his rifle up my ass, it would have been like, "See, senor, like you can do it." And so,
and the Mexican police play by their own rules, from what I hear too. Yeah.
And so that's like, are they cartel? Are they police? Are they good police? Bad police? Yeah. So like,
is this whole thing a fucking scam that is set up with the dudes that I'm here? I would be thinking all that shit too. Yeah.
It was terrifying. Damn. And you've had a moment where you were held at gunpoint.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. What was going through your head, and maybe adjustments you made after that to ensure future safety?
Right. So when we got that store in Hollywood, it was basically like me, just normal guy. It was like 2017. I wasn't like famous yet, or like nobody knew who I was at all. I could stand in front of the store and hang out with the guys for hours and nobody would give a shit. And like throughout the couple of years that we were there, my name just kept getting bigger, and it got to the point where I couldn't even go outside and stand out on the street without, you know, like people just pulling up, slowing down. There might be a car accident from somebody bumping into somebody while they're trying to film me and shit. And like, you know, people would just be coming around all the time and they wouldn't want to leave. And, you know, eventually we got security, and I'm lying. We got, you know, the homies carrying guns. Like at a certain point.
Did you roll with security?
I have security at the No Jumper building. And yeah, so.
Did you pick them because of their size or because of their skill with a firearm?
A little bit of both. He's a big ass guy with a big gun. So
but it's not like former military or.
I'm not sure what he was doing before this. I think he was like a football player, actually. Our security. You'll meet him at the spot. But yeah, I mean, we've had like a bunch of different like sort of more and less professional security over the years. But this particular situation, we were just in the back of the bike shop, streaming, playing people's music, smoking mad weed, high as hell, and we ordered some food. The food's showing up, and the guy who's, you know, carrying the gun basically like goes to like get the food, and while he's bringing the food in, this dude slips in through the door and runs up and like points a fucking gun at my head and says, "Give me all your money." And, you know, you can watch the clip. My reaction was kind of goofy. I let out this weird, like, hee-hee type thing while he's pointing the gun at me, like, because I kind of thought it was a prank. Like, I was kind of confused in the moment. And then it turned out the gun was fake.
Really?
And we fucking damn near, like, kicked this dude's head in before we even realized it was fake. And, you know, we called the cops. The cops
So did
came.
someone confront him from behind and tackle him, or how'd you take care of the threat?
Okay, so he's walking towards me with the gun, and the next thing I see is that my homie, who had just gotten the food, he's got his gun pointed at this head, at this dude's head.
Huh?
And I'm thinking, like, am I about to get shot twice? Like, are both bullets going to somehow, like, come together to kill me? And so he chose not to shoot the guy for some reason, and that was kind of shocking. And but yeah, that was that. And then after that, yeah, like, everything changed. We got a different studio because, you know, just having this shitty little bike shop on Melrose, it was just too open, you know? People could be... There was a couple different times where, like, one time we were having a little party and, like, you know, there was a guy who wanted to fight me, and, you know, some of the guys, like, kicked him out, and then they found him just, like, waiting outside the back door, like, an hour and a half later. And that was, like, another moment where it's like, oh, fuck, like, anything could happen here. Like, I got to move completely different. I can't ever be anywhere without a shooter. So, yeah, that changed everything.
Do you have any level of, maybe you could call it awareness, maybe you could call it paranoia, but when you're out and about operating, is it in the back of your head, like, got to keep a low profile, got to keep the car tinted, got to keep this and that?
Yeah, I try to be, like, real low key with, you know, how I go out, wear sunglasses, wear a hoodie. Sometimes I'm wearing, like, a mask and stuff like that. And, like, but the main thing is, like, and it's LA is, like, two different fucking planets. You got, like, LA below Wilshire, and then you got, like, above Wilshire / the valley. And a lot of people like me, you know, we would try to, I'm not going to, like, any kind of shit where, like, almost anybody knows me, to be honest. Like, me and my girl go out on the weekend, we're going to a bunch of, like, you know, restaurants and, like, farmers markets and shit like that in Beverly Hills. It's like a different fucking planet because, like, you know, very occasionally do I get recognized. So my attitude about, you know, going to the farmer's market in Beverly Hills is way different than my attitude about going to the swap meet on Crenshaw or whatever. So very, very different levels of security depending on exactly what I'm doing. But yeah.
Do you see yourself in LA long term? I know that there's been, since COVID, with different policies, there's been a little bit of a flight. Do you still see this as a hub that you're going to have as your headquarters for a long time, or what's your take on that?
I mean, I just bought this fucking $5 million building and for us to run No Jumper out of. And, you know, I own a house here. We're thinking about buying another house. You know, I got my kid here. I'm definitely not trying to, you know.
Buy another house to move into, or is it like real estate investment?
We've kind of gone back and forth on that. So we're not really 100% sure. But, you know, like, I'm not going to be trying to drag my kid going to different schools and stuff. You know, I'm really trying to build a life here. There are things like I would like to live in Vegas for tax reasons, and I would like to live in New York because I love riding BMX in New York, and that's something that I like. Whenever I'm out there, I'm trying to do that, and whenever I'm here, I'm not really thinking about it. So that's kind of there's things I love about all these different places, but at the end of the day, like my family moved here to be around me and my kid and shit. Like, my parents and my sister and stuff essentially moved here so that we could all be together. And my girl's family's here, and they're Armenian, so they're, like, super tight. Like, they spend tons of time together. So yeah, I guess I'm pretty much trapped in the LA vortex forever.
Speaking of family, your Wikipedia page says that your uncle was a high-profile politician in New Hampshire.
Right. My uncle ran for governor of New Hampshire at one point and lost. But then after that, like, he always had a career in politics, like, and he worked as, like, a diplomat of sorts, like, working with international trade under Bill Clinton. And then he was actually, like, the rare person who, despite being a Democrat, was actually, like, allowed to continue to serve under Bush for many, many years. And maybe under Obama as well, from what I recall. So yeah, it was pretty.
Did that fall into your life at all? Like, politics was a heavy subject of conversation amongst your folks, that you were politically minded as a young age?
Politics was definitely, like, a consistent presence in my childhood. But, like, a lot of people think, like, oh, your dad was a unpaid volunteer for Bill Clinton, so therefore you must have had this, like, really rich, fancy life. But the reality is that I grew up going with my dad to like do honking waves, which is what you stand on a busy corner with a sign that says vote for Bill Clinton and you try to get people to honk at you. Like that was.
Do you feel like that was a successful strategy?
Even as a kid, I was like, this is stupid.
Was
like,
that only on voting days that you would do that, or just like in general? Like
it would increase a lot in the lead up to voting days. But I have a lot of memories like that. Hopping in my dad's Honda, and we'd be driving around the neighborhood asking people if we could put signs like "Vote for Bill Clinton" in the primaries on their yard and shit like that. So it was like, I don't know that my dad ever really like made money working in politics. I think that he was passionate about it.
Your dad was in it too.
My dad was an alderman in Nashua,
Really?
New Hampshire, which is basically like a pretty low level, like city employee. And then at one point he ran for mayor. So he ran for mayor and lost. And yeah, like that was
Alderman's like the step down from mayor. Like if there's like 12 sections of a city, the alderman runs one of those 12 sections, and the mayor runs all 12.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you know more about than me. But
Well,
it's like that, yeah, roughly, yeah. It's like your little panel if you're the mayor, like that helps you get shit done, I guess.
Did you ever get to meet old Bill?
Oh yeah, a couple times, yeah.
How is he?
He was a pretty cool guy, like certain people are just meant to be politicians, and
Was he
like,
a charmer?
Yeah, he has that. And like my dad, I remember always telling me that every time he would see him over the years, and keep in mind that like, what my dad was doing for him was like pretty low level. Like there are hundreds or thousands of other people who were doing for Bill Clinton probably at that time, or in order for him to become president even once, he probably dealt with so many goddamn people that were doing the type of stuff that my dad was doing. But my dad said every time he ever saw him, "Hey Phil, how you doing?" Like just immediately fucking knew his name. And that means so much to people. That is like the biggest thing when it comes to people really embracing you. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but my dad went to prison and then ended up getting a presidential pardon from Bill Clinton, which a lot of people are fascinated by. But yeah, my dad got caught up on like mail fraud charges, basically like being accused of like, misusing his role as an alderman to get business for the construction company that he was serving for. He was like, helping them get jobs and stuff like that. And so he ended up getting this crazy ass case, and they were trying to get my dad's boss caught up, and my dad wouldn't snitch on him or wouldn't roll over on him. So he ends up having to go. He takes a plea deal. He does a year in a prison.
How old were you at the time?
I was like 12.
How did that impact your life?
Big time. It filled me with so much rage and anger because I just
You
felt
felt like you got screwed?
Hell yeah. I was so pissed off. Like it really had a very bad effect on me at the time. It made me just like super antisocial. And
was this the start of the BMX period?
It was pretty close together, yeah. Bike riding was just definitely like a real relief or a release. And in particular, because like when my dad got home from prison, it was like he was kind of being like more strict with me in terms of like wanting me to, be really focused on school and all this kind of shit. And at a certain point, like bike riding was like, oh, I can get on my bike with my friends and ride, and we'll be 10 miles away from my house. And this is like pre-cell phone and everything. It's like, if I go out and ride with the dudes for the day, I'm not going to have to see my parents for 10 hours. And we get along great now. So this is all like kind of weird to even think about. But yeah, that like was the biggest thing to me at the time, was just that sense of freedom.
So I know that in a modern day right now that you can't even really meet people in jail or prison for the most part. Like you have to do the $15 for 15 minutes phone conference, or you can do a video chat. But even if you drive all the way to go see them, you can't get a face-to-face meeting.
Because of COVID or?
No, I think it was just for security reasons. Like I know my brother did a brief stint. He was in the dark web kind of world, and he was slanging like weed and mushrooms, and he got his door kicked in Alabama. And so he did 10 months, and he's like one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And so like he was this like genius level kid that was with like 5th grade reading level inmate guys that were just, it would have been hilarious to have a camera with him just to see how he interacted.
Yeah, definitely. It was crazy for me too, because, I'm a young dude who's like obsessed with rap music and everything. And all of a sudden my dad's in a penitentiary in Pennsylvania. And from what he said at the time, I think it was like 90% black, right? And it was, I remember he was locked up during the Million Man March which was like, do you remember this? Like,
That was a civil rights movement.
yeah, and it was like Louis Farrakhan tried to get
Okay.
1 million people to go to D.C. to march, and I forget exactly.
So was that
what
during the strong Malcolm X days when they were still united?
No, this is like late 90s. This is
Okay.
like probably 95 or 96, I think. And I just remember my dad telling me that he was fasting with all the Muslim guys or whatever during the Million Man March because those guys couldn't be there. And he was like broing down with them so hard that he was fasting with them. And I remember being on the phone and just being like, what the fuck? That's crazy.
The discipline of that Muslim movement, I think, was largely really good. Like, those were guys that took care of their family. They were very, I mean, anything that you have to do 5 times a day, you have to pray, you have to be very mindful of the different traditions and holidays. Like, I'm not religious myself, but I can see the utility in having your life disciplined that way. But I was curious. So did you ever get to see your dad in person, or did you have to do things through the mail? Or
Yeah, we would go out there. That was like when I said he didn't roll over on his boss. That meant that they were like paying for us to, go out there whenever we wanted and stuff, like the company that he was working for. So that was good, at least, that we got to kind of go out there. I just remember he was locked up in the same town as the Zippo lighter factory.
So when you would stop by, you bring dad a little Zippo. So if there's any cigarettes that he could get in jail,
I don't know if I would have been able to bring it in, but we would go to the like Zippo like museum or some sort of like historical thing where they would show you the history of the Zippo lighters, which I am still to this day a fan of the Zippo lighters, even though I don't use them.
Did your parents stay together during that time?
Yeah, it was tough, but yeah.
Could you imagine your wife going to jail for a year and how the relationship would go?
Man, I'm holding her down.
Gang, gang, baby.
It's a lot more realistic than maybe I would get locked up.
I don't really do much illegal shit, but for some reason I have like a acceptance that there might be a period in my life where I would go to prison, and what I would do, like I would do a lot of push-ups, I'd do a lot of reading. I'd hope to be in a environment that I could try and unite people, which is like, it's not a storybook. Like, it's not like you can just go in there and do whatever. But I guess, have you ever thought about if you went to prison, how you would spend your time? What would you do?
What would I do? Probably, try to read as much as possible. Probably try to write as much as possible. Since, like, it's funny when you said that. Like, I would do a lot of push-ups and I would read a lot. It's like that's really the most bare bones version of what our lives are like right now, where we like try to take care of our bodies and then we try to like consume interesting content, but then we also create content. And that's the whole thing when you're locked up, is like you can't create content. So you could write, I feel like I would try to like, make the best of it. The big thing I wonder about is like, would it be better to be around a ton of crazy ass gangster motherfuckers who might stab you and have this like really risky existence, or would it be better to be like, nah, I'm a public figure, I'm gonna go in PC, I'm gonna be with all the weird ass people and snitches and shit? Like, I honestly, I don't know what would be a better choice.
I think, man, that's something I have to think about. But the one thing that I know is that the food, could you imagine that food every single day?
I think about that all the time.
I would have so much diarrhea if I went to prison. They'd probably call me like leaky ass in jail or something, because I would be a problem.
Yeah, just given what I eat on a consistent basis and how much control I have over it, the idea that like lunch would be like some refried beans and like a
applesauce
and white bread with like because I got locked up for 24 hours in New York one time, and oh my God, just having to eat like, it was 2 pieces of white bread with like a little blat of peanut butter in there. I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. Like, if I want to not go to prison just for the food alone.
I have a pipe dream that that I would open up a private prison, so here's how I would fund it. Here's how it would go. Basically, it'd be a prison that's a training grounds for a lot of the trades, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, you name it. And you kind of have a recruiting process, which I think this is where we run into the first yellow tape. But prisons all around the country, you can apply to stay in our prison. It's going to be a lot more relaxed as far as the containment. You're going to be a lot more freedom than you ordinarily would.
You want the best of the best. Like the Harvard of prisons.
Exactly. And how we would fund it is this. So you would train these guys, and then they'd be doing jobs to train while they're in there. And then once they get out, maybe it's a deal where the first 4 years of release, we get 10% of their salary or their income that they make outside. So then it's entirely funded by the success of our program. Like, that's how I think colleges, if they really wanted to be like, oh, we're an amazing school, bet on themselves and say, okay, we get 10% of the alumni money. So I think it's probably an idea that I don't know if it could ever come to fruition, but I think we've got to do something that experiments with the current model, because the current model seems not to be working.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't really ever thought about owning a private prison. Normally, I just hear about them getting a bad rap and people being kind of offended by their existence at all. But yeah.
I mean, with that, and I would have to do the financials, but is it possible that you could actually have healthy, good meals? Is it possible that you could have a lot more freedom? And I think it would be strict, where it's like, okay, like you have a kind of a one strike policy. Like, this is a really big opportunity. If you mess it up, you're going back.
See, yeah, because I think that in a lot of ways is the truth. Is like, if you treat people like animals, they will behave like animals. And it's like, if you treated prisoners better, there probably would be some like significant, uptick in their behavior. But I just wonder to what extent the prison is really even incentivized to that. Because, if a prisoner kills another prisoner here and there, is it really that big a deal to them? I don't think that they really like give a shit, or it's not the end of the world to them. Like, they're just not.
It's just a function of business to
exactly.
them.
Like, why does a hotel want to change your pillow every day? Because you're a paying customer and they have every incentive to make you happy. A prison is just like, they have no reason to make you happy, so they do nothing to make you happy. And society as a whole doesn't really think that you deserve to be happy if you're locked up. So, yeah.
Man, if prisons could get Yelp reviews, imagine reading that shit, huh?
Wow. My dad went to the nicest prison. I'm going to be real. You could have walked out of that shit. It was like, I don't know. It was like really laid back.
One of my best friends on planet Earth did 10 years in California when he was when he was 20, 25. He robbed 4 banks. He's out. He's like the best family man. Like, he's a guy who could put a duffel bag of $1 million in front of. I trust him completely. I love the guy. And so I guess I think a lot of those guys that are in there have a lot of potential, because they already have the factors you need. Like, to be an entrepreneur, you need to be able to take risk. You need to be able to hustle. You need to be able to do things and kind of march to the beat of your own drum. I feel like a lot of these guys, if you just equipped them with, it's a knowledge thing. If you just equipped them to get into a different space, that they could apply those same things that made them successful as a criminal and make them successful as an entrepreneur, these guys would crush it.
But there's definitely some percentage of them that are just like schizophrenic or have such serious mental issues or are just going to fucking kill somebody if they disrespect them, that it's kind of hard for me to imagine. But what you're talking about of like selecting prisoners who have like a very, very good track record, maybe it could work. But I also just wonder to what extent like trying to do that kind of like really improving prisons would be so difficult, because I feel like there's just some percentage of prisoners who are just too far gone that are never going to comply. But I guess they can just not go to your private prison.
It seems like what we're running into as a country is there's so many huge entities, whether it's our healthcare, our prison, our government. Like, there's so many of these massive entities that we know there's something wrong. We all have this general feeling in the air that, like, okay, we're not being told the truth. They're wasting all of our money. Things just aren't going right, and we expect more. Because I think America is a great place, but I think it could be even better by a lot. And I guess it's hard not to get frustrated, overwhelmed, because it's like it feels like a task that's unwinnable to clean everything up. And a gentleman we were speaking to yesterday, was just, his thing is just focus on what you can control. Don't turn on the TV and just move forward the best you can. But how do you battle with not putting your head in the sand and being aware of what's going on and wanting better for the world? And how do you battle with, hey, I can't change anything in this direction. I'm just going to keep my path here.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And especially when you're young, you're so full of like vigor and ideas and optimism. And then you start to get older and you're just like I hate when like younger people try to talk to me about like homelessness. Because I'm like, man, my attitude on this is so much more pessimistic. I've just fully given up on trying to solve this idea in my head. And I'll be listening to like a young person talk about it. I'm like, the world needs people like you. But I am clearly not exactly that person anymore.
It's great to be optimistic, but I agree, like, there's a reality of the world sets in as you gain more experience. And like, I've interviewed homeless guys that live underground Las Vegas. I've interviewed them at Skid Row, and we're going to go to Tent City in Phoenix. I mean, they're all over the place. And there's a lot of those guys are not, you're not going to save them. I'm not going to save them. It's getting clean on drugs. It's finding purpose. It's getting employment. And a lot of them, there's opportunities and they don't want to take advantage of it. So I guess, how do you balance your energy into thinking about things that, oh man, this could be so much better, but I can't change it. Like, is that thing that you spend any time thinking about, or are you pretty good about keeping your head low and just moving forward?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of have to stay focused on the things that I can affect, you know? And it's like at a certain point, you do have those thoughts of like, you know, like maybe I could create a product, or maybe I could create this thing that's going to change the world. And then at a certain point, you start to feel like, well, maybe I'm just not that guy. Maybe like, you know, because like you look at like all the greatest like technological innovations, or like I see people like commit their entire lives to like, you know, this one invention that they're just trying to like push onto the world. And I don't know, like sometimes I do feel like maybe I'm like not thinking big picture enough, that I don't have this huge thing. But then I also feel like, well, focusing on making this content is the thing that made me successful in the first place. So maybe I should just double down on this, because I've seen countless YouTubers who had a big fan base and then they try to go do TV, or they try to write a book, or they try to disappear off the internet for a year, and then they come back with this big idea, and it's like the fan base is just not there in the same way, and it's hard to recover after that. So it's like two very different mentalities. It's like, do you want to stay on this content treadmill and just keep pumping shit out and trying to be the best YouTuber possible? Or do you want to try to think so far outside the box while knowing that you might be taking the risk of like alienating the people that got you in this position in the first place?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about Benjamin Franklin earlier today. His biography's in the Airbnb, and I've read it a couple of times, and he's in my top three. I would say Benjamin Franklin, Teddy Roosevelt, Malcolm X. Those are my three favorite biographies. And one thing I noticed about Benjamin Franklin is he did all these things, like in so many spheres he was successful, but he was a terrible father. And so I would still say he's a hero of mine, but I'm curious, who was a hero of yours when you were growing up, and do you still have a hero at this point of your life?
Hero. I mean, I feel like a lot of the people I look up to at this point, it's because of, you know, their ideas or their businesses they've been able to build up. I don't know that I would say that Sam Harris or Destiny are like my heroes. They're just like people I really respect, that I really like, you know, hearing them talk to people. I feel like, you know, I'm willing to listen to them talk to almost anybody. There's a handful of people that fall into that category of like, I trust you and I fuck with you so much as a broadcaster that I'm pretty much willing to endure whatever kind of content you want to make. I don't know. A lot of my heroes when I was young though are like, I guess rappers, or even like, I was so into comic book art for a while, bro, and I was just like drawing that shit all the time and buying books and reading articles about different comic book artists. Like I was into so many different things as a young kid. But in terms of who I would consider like my actual heroes, you know, like people like Tupac and Jay-Z and Dr. Dre and stuff. But, you know, as I get older, I just look at them as like human beings that, you know, it's not like they're really that much different than me or you or whoever, aside from the fact that they've accomplished, you know, a lot and everything like that. But yeah, I don't know. Hero is tough for me now. I can recognize individuals as being heroic, you know, for sure. If you told me that you ran into a burning building and saved 4 kids the other day, I would be like, damn, this motherfucker a hero. But my hero that I look at and they just guide me through my life, and I don't know. Hero is a weird word.
You would be in a position, I think, that you're probably inundated with new music all the time, right?
Constantly.
What has been on repeat for you lately? Is there anything that you're like, I can't stop jamming to this, either song or album or artist?
Okay, I'm gonna go into the playlist. I always have a playlist going of like a bunch of songs that I'm listening to at that moment.
You're an Apple Music guy?
I am.
Have you ever heard of Spotify?
I have, and I don't really care for it that much.
Really?
There's this guy Mud Baby Roo.
Yes, I DM'd him the other day.
Oh, really?
Because
I could tap you on with him. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What's that song he
Gun Class.
Yes.
Yeah, we interviewed him a little while back.
West Memphis.
There's this dude Skilla Baby. He has the song Tay B Style that's on the playlist. I just interviewed this dude Tion Wayne, and he's from the UK. He's like a drill rapper. Well, is he a drill rapper? I don't know if he's a drill rapper, but he has a song with Russ Millions called Body. And then, this is my favorite song right now, Deuce by 41, Kyle Rich and Jen Carter. These are drill rappers from Brooklyn. And this song has like damn near like an EDM switch up in the beat. And I'm just like,
it gets you.
I'm convinced that this is like the future of music, and I would never be someone to ever act as if hip hop needs more EDM influence. But I listen to that song and I'm like, I feel like a lot of rap songs are going to sound like this in a couple of years.
It seems like something that's really happening in the genre of rap is really interesting crossovers that you never anticipated. So I'm hearing a lot more country and rap being mixed. There was a really good era and still going of punk and rap being mixed, metal and rap being mixed. So you think maybe EDM and rap might be one of the next iterations?
I just think that like there's got to be some. When I listen to this song, the beat just sounds so much more like EDM, but it doesn't sound cringe to me. Whereas when I think about like the 2010, 2011, 2012 era, where EDM was the biggest shit in the world, and every rap song that I heard that tried to take any influence from EDM just ended up sounding horrible. I don't know. Like the whole thing in rap is it just keeps getting faster and faster. The beats are so fucking fast now.
1 minute songs, 2 minute songs.
And you go on TikTok and it's like, oh, there's the new Ice Spice song, and then there's the sped up version of the new Ice Spice song that has even fucking more views in a lot of cases. Like the BPM has just increased so much that it's kind of catching up with EDM, I think. So now maybe it sounds a little bit more normal for them to come together. I don't know.
One thing that we were discussing are who are people that are one of one. They're absolutely original, and they just turn your head every time you see them. In my case, my friend Certified Trapper from Milwaukee. This guy is an absolute character, from the dance move to the beats to the antics.
He is a genius, yes.
Who is somebody that you're witnessing right now that you're like, there is nobody like this, and oh my gosh, they're a spectacle?
Man, I interviewed this dude Bizzle the other day. He's like a BMX rider with one eye, and he's out of his fucking mind. But I also, by the end of it, was convinced like this guy could be a superstar. I'm gonna send you a link to an interview that we did with him that's coming out soon. I know it probably doesn't sound like the best thing ever, but just real one-of-one type people. I don't know who's a real one-of-one. I don't know. Everybody seems kind of like they're jacking somebody these days. I don't know. But well, Certified Trapper, okay, yeah. I mean, like, I see what you mean about him though, but at the same time, I also saw you give Certified Trapper credit for a Gucci Mane lyric in a video.
What is it about the pancakes?
Yeah, I figured I didn't even have to tell you because I know that the fucking comment section probably told you, but yeah.
Well, I like to credit Certified when possible. And Adam, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to say to the audience?
Shout out to Tommy G for coming to my crib and doing this interview. I never thought I would have somebody film with me while working out in the morning, so that was exciting, especially while my garage is in such a state of disrepair. But yeah, you know, honestly, like watching your channel and stuff, like it makes me hype that I still could get turned on to new YouTubers and like watch their content and get excited about it. Like last night I was actually genuinely bummed to go to bed because there was like 3 more of your videos that I had saved that I really wanted to watch. So, I mean, anyone who's excited about doing the content and brings something new to it, I have infinite respect for. So
I appreciate
keep doing what
that.
you're doing, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the episode of the Tommy G Show with Adam 22. We'll see you next episode. Peace.